Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ dhammāṃ saṅghāṃ Lokuttara Vihara namasami. So, to begin with, I just want to talk about one of the main misunderstandings of Buddhism that come across quite a lot. And that's the idea that Buddhism says you shouldn't have any desires. Desires are bad. And that you should get rid of all your desires. And that's what enlightenment is all about. So there's some obvious objections to that. First, is that really possible? Surely not. Secondly, even if it were possible, why would you want to do that? It's not a very uplifting, inspiring goal for most people. So the answer to that is, well, actually the Buddha didn't teach that at all. What the Buddha taught was that human suffering, mental suffering, is the result of a lack of understanding, or a wrong understanding, misunderstanding of ourselves, our human nature and the world we live in. So the Buddha rejected the idea of some divine punishment or test or plan, but said that we can discover all that we need to discover in our life by looking at ourselves. And the Buddha pointed out that whenever and in whatever situation, in whatever context, we don't have a clear or correct understanding of what's going on, then there will be one of three kinds of craving that manifest in the mind. So in other words, the expression of ignorance is craving. So you can't sort of point to something and say that's ignorance, but it's not a tangible thing that you can observe and recognize. But just as we can't see the wind, but we can see the leaves rustling in the trees. So those are the expression, the tangible expression of wind. The expression of ignorance is craving. And there are three kinds of craving. There's the craving for sense experience, sense pleasure. There's the craving for becoming, and the craving for getting rid of. So I'll explain those in some detail in a moment. But the Buddha asks us to look at what happens to ourselves, our well-being, our mental health, when this kind of craving takes hold of it. And what are the consequences of it for our life and for our relationship to the people around us and our relationship to the world we live in. So the Buddha said that these cravings and the ignorance on which they are based are not things we just have to put up with. We are, as human beings, blessed with the potential to see clearly the way things are and thus to eliminate all craving. And through doing so, we realize the highest thing that a human being can realize: liberation, freedom, true happiness. Now the Buddha said that there are also desires that arise from knowledge and understanding. So the Pali word for not understanding or wrong understanding, misunderstanding, is avijja. And the word for understanding is vijja. So in Pali language, whenever you have an A at the beginning of the word, it just negates what follows. It's the opposite. So it was that if you have a clear understanding of the way things are, that does not result in passivity or some kind of annihilation, but there are desires that arise from that clear knowledge. Let's give an example. You're walking along the road, you see someone fall over and hurt themselves, you rush over to help them. So you have that desire to help somebody who's suffering. That's not considered craving. That's a different kind of desire. It's not a desire based on ignorance. It's a desire based on knowledge and understanding. That person is in pain. Nobody wants to be in pain. We have the capacity to be able to help to reduce or alleviate that pain. We should do that if we can. So the Buddha used two different words to refer to desire. You have the word the desires, or what we call cravings in English, and when we do make a distinction, in Pali language that's called tanha. And then you have the wholesome desires, which are called chanda, or dhammachanda. So the Buddha's teaching is not that you want to get rid of all desires, because that's not possible, but you want to eliminate the unwholesome desires and cultivate the wholesome desires. So one teaching on the four paths to success was called the Iddhipadas, and that means either worldly success or spiritual success. The first quality, the first virtue that you need is chanda, this wholesome desire, this enthusiasm, this passion for the good and true. And whenever that kind of enthusiasm, interest, passion has been cultivated, then effort will flow from that naturally. And if that right motivation and right effort is sustained, the mind will attain focus, concentration, and be very effective in whatever it turns to. The Buddha also recommended that we develop a fourth quality, because your joy is in the work itself and in the quality of the work and the quality of mind that you bring to the work. You find joy in it. So in the worldly sense, the Buddhist, let's say we're in the macroeconomic kind of view, then the idea is that human motivation is of two kinds. There's the wholesome and the unwholesome motivation, craving and chanda, and that there will always be, inevitably, a certain amount of the worldly, unwholesome, craving motivations at play in a capitalist economy, for sure. But that a healthy and sustainable economy, culture, is one which tries to, as far as possible, to channel that energy from the craving channel to the wholesome channel. So as I say, this is not a renunciation or a falling short in material goals, but it's one in which the efforts towards material security and progress are integrated into a healthy spiritual approach to life. Now this same principle is applied to our spiritual practice. So as meditators, what's one of the main mistakes that meditators make? Or they allow their mind to become motivated by craving, meaning the results of meditation. So you have some idea of what you want from meditation. So you may call it peace or enlightenment or whatever, but the first reminder that we need to bring up regularly is you don't really know what that means. Okay, you're meditating in order to realize peace, but you don't know what peace is because you've never experienced it. And the mistake that many people make is to assume that peace is a kind of intense, profound relaxation. So when you meditate, or many people meditate, at the beginning, it's kind of a lot of thoughts, a lot of agitation, a lot of movement in the mind. And then if you persevere, that movement starts to decrease and become relaxed. And at that point, it's like you feel, wow, now I've made it. I've realized this peace, and you relax into the peace and you fall asleep. So there's this constant yo-yo, pendulum, going backwards and forth between agitation and dullness and sleepiness for many meditators. So why is that? Well, there are a number of contributory causes, but one of them is this misunderstanding of what peace is and assuming that relaxation is, the reward that you're receiving from your efforts. But the goal of meditation, or the heart of meditation, is this Buddha awareness, this clear, sharp, bright awareness. That's what we're cultivating. There was when I was a young monk, friend, he's actually a monk senior to myself, very, very frustrated with his meditation, and went to see our teacher, Ajahn Jayasāro. He said, I'm so agitated, what can I do? And Ajahn Jayasāro said, it's not a problem. When you're agitated, you know you're agitated, and when you're not agitated, you know you're not agitated. It took me quite a while to really understand what that meant. But Lumpur Cha was making this point that it's not necessarily the case that if there's movement in your mind that you don't know how to meditate or you're wasting your time, because it's the effort to sustain this clarity of mind, this sharpness of mind, which is the point. And sometimes it's easier in a way than when the mind hasn't so much going on within it, because it's so easy to become dull. And one of the reasons dullness is such a problem is that we're so overly stimulated in our lives these days. With modern technology, we have access to distraction and entertainment at every moment of our life. I mean, this is an unimaginable state of affairs if we compare it with most of human history. And so it means that our minds tend to become rather weak because if you're feeling uncomfortable or bored or anxious or upset, now all you have to do is just take hold of your phone and you can be taken out of that. So in a way, I mean, it's an incredible thing, isn't it? To be able to let go of that kind of discomfort in a second or in a moment. But long-term consequences, you never develop that mental resilience and strength and clarity and ability to be with unpleasant mental states and learn how to handle them and manage them and learn how to protect your mind against them or to let them go when they develop. These are really essential life skills which are very much harder to develop now that we don't have to develop them. You know, part of the ethos of a monastic is you're putting yourself in a position where you can't run away from yourself. You have to face up to yourself in a way that in a lay life it's not the case. As a monastic, you cut off all these avenues of distraction and escape in order to face up to this body and mind and this life as a human being. But because we're constantly receiving information and stimulation, we become addicted to it. It's just natural. That becomes our baseline. And so the only time that the mind is free of something or other is when we're about to sleep. So when the amount of thinking in the mind is reduced, then the immediate signal from the brain is it's time to go to sleep. So this is why when we're looking at meditation, we always have to see it in context of our whole life, because it's not like you have a problem that arises in meditation. It's a technical problem. There's a technical fix for it, and that there's some kind of magic bullet or some kind of special technique that great meditation masters know, and if they'll just be kind enough to tell you, then you can be free of all your meditation problems. Because what you're doing in meditation is you're looking at your mind and how your mind is these days, how your mind is right now. And what you're seeing is your whole life and your whole way you live your life being encapsulated in your experience during meditation. So meditation is another analogy would be like you're looking into a microscope. And of course, if you look at something with your naked eye, it appears in a certain way, and then you look in a microscope and you see all kinds of things that you're not able to see with your naked eye. And in daily life, there are all kinds of things in yourself and in your mind that you don't see. It's very difficult to see them, even if you're really determined to do so. But it's in meditation where you turn the focus on the mind, its body and mind itself, and you can see all kinds of things. And this is one of the most important functions of meditation. It's not like I'm meditating in order to become peaceful, in order to this, in order to that, and if I can do it, then I'm a good meditator, and if I'm not, I'm a bad meditator. What you should be using meditation as a way of exploring and learning about your life and learning how to understand the way things are. I'll give you a very simple example. In daily life, we often have pressures, work pressures. You have to suddenly find yourself, you've got a limited amount of time, and you just got to go for it. And many people can do that for a certain period of time. You just put everything into it, so much effort. But it really stresses you out. And then after you've finished, what do? You say, I just want to lay back and relax. Do you want to meditate? No, I just want to relax. So you have these it's like two different poles of experience. You've got effort over here and relaxation over here. And they never sort of really meet up anywhere important. So one of the life skills that as a Buddhist we are interested in developing is relaxed effort. Being able to put consistent effort into any area of our life and not be stressed out and not go through this endless kind of process of hard work and then a reaction to it and laziness and then pushing yourself and then feeling guilty and then maybe getting it done a bit, then going back to the opposite extreme. And so we're so inconsistent in our efforts because we don't really able to find this integration or this balance of effort and relaxation. So is there a way we can learn this? Well, I would contend that meditation is very good for this, Buddhist meditation, because your body and your mind are an extremely effective and efficient feedback system. So what I mean by this is that if you're meditating and you're really going to try hard, okay, go for it, and not going to let my mind go anywhere, I'm going to stay on my breath, something like this, what happens? Incredibly frustrating, and you get your breathing tends to become uneven, you get sort of feel of constriction, maybe you get a headache, and it's kind of miserable. And what's happening there is that your mind is giving you immediate feedback. Your mind is telling you that you're putting too much effort without any relaxation. Just be a little bit more relaxed, just come down a notch or two. Similarly, if you're meditating without any real sense of purpose, without any real effort involved, too relaxed, too sabai, then what happens? Either you fall asleep or you're off in a daydream. So if that's happening, then this is the body and the mind giving you feedback and telling you not enough effort, too much relaxation. So you give yourself a job, let's say, be mindful of the breath, and you see what happens. And if you're putting too much effort, then your mind tells you start to feel stressed and tensed. If you're too little effort, mind won't stay on the object. So you're getting this information, you're getting this feedback, helping you to fine-tune your effort. And that skill that you develop in meditation is a skill that's applicable, that you can then apply in daily life. So there are many, we have so many moods and emotions, and in Buddhist what we say, defilements arising in the mind. But until we start to meditate, it's all just kind of permutations of me. So, I felt really good this morning. I felt just really kind of happy and enthusiastic, and then I had a row with my boss, and now I feel really miserable and lost all my confidence, and then had a chat with a friend, and now I'm feeling a lot. So it's like me and my journey and my odyssey and me and my ups and downs. And that's just a normal and natural way to think about ourselves and our life, isn't it? But when we start to meditate, we get a whole new perspective. Because we give the mind a job, say, when I breathe in, know that I'm breathing in, breathe out, know that I'm breathing out, and see what happens. And when the mind wanders off, then we're aware of this is a distraction. This is a thought. This is a memory. This is a fantasy that's arisen in my mind. And I'm aware of it and I put it down. So you're aware of something that arises and passes away. So now, rather than this idea of I am like this, I was really feeling good in the morning and I got a bit depressed during the afternoon, but I feel a bit better in the evening, something like this. You say, this arose and it passed away, and that arose and it passed away, and this arose and it passed away. So we're beginning to see ourselves as process, as like a river of experience, rather than this singular autonomous me that does things and has things happen to me. And again, this is so valuable. And so we're not talking about getting to any really profound level of calm and insight, but simply being aware that every aspect, everything that goes to make up our life, our body, our feelings, our thoughts, our emotions, our memories, and so on, are all in a constant state of flux. And that there's nobody standing behind it. It's like the owner of experience, or the manipulator of experience. It's just a flow, but it's not a random flow. It's a flow that proceeds according to causes and conditions, which can be recognized. Now we're living in a world a world of change. So the world, it's not only the world is changing, but the world is changed. I mean, that's what the world is. It's just change. But over the past years, it really feels that the speed of change, the velocity of change, is accelerating. And so it is accelerating in ways that nobody can forecast, nobody can be really confident about. Even the smartest people, the people who have the greatest knowledge, whenever they make predictions, they're as often likely to be wrong as they are to be right. It's just such a complex web of causes and conditions, but it's changing so fast. So how do you feel as a human being in the face of it? Makes you feel insecure and anxious, doesn't it? And so in a time of intense, rapid change, where everybody feels in sort of everything's unstable and unpredictable and unreliable, then one reaction to that is just to grasp onto something. And this is where fundamentalist religion tends to grow in times of rapid change, because it's saying, yeah, all this is changing, but you just hold on to this, and this will keep you safe. So the idea that certain beliefs or dogmas can keep you safe and grounded in the midst of change. This is a very popular idea. It's probably one of the most popular ideas ever in the history of the human race. The other idea is for usually younger people. Just the idea of change is exhilarating. Wow, let's just throw out all the old stuff, and it's all past its expiry date, and none of it was ever any good in the first place. These old folks, they've just made a mess of everything. Let's change everything. So this kind of like embracing change, and just like the word change is like in itself is considered to be like a positive thing. So let's just like surf this wave of change. So these are kind of like knee-jerk, immediate reactions to change, but they're based upon this idea of me in a world of change. Me being threatened by change, or me being carried along by change. But the wrong view at the heart of it, and why it always ends in tears, is because it's based upon ignorance, a lack of understanding. So coming back to meditation, when you see that you yourself are change, the closer you look at yourself, the moment you, what happens when you meditate on your breath? Well, before long, you don't have any sense of, I am this person, with this name, with this personal history, with this personality. Goes out the window. You're with the real world. You know, so people use that phrase, in all kinds of ways. But I would say the real world is what you experience directly when you just let go of all distractions and memory and anticipation. What's right here now? This is the real world. You don't even have a sense of yourself as being male or female or gender, of identity in any way. What you do see, the closer you look, the clearer your vision, the more you're aware of this flow of change. So, in terms of the relationship to external change, as long as you believe, you have this superstitious belief in this permanent entity called me, who has all these challenges and things to deal with, then you're always going to, feel some level of discomfort and suffering. But when you see it's not a matter of me in a world of change, it's an inner world of change and an outer world of change. And there's a harmony, it's just different kinds of change. There's no important or relevant distinction. So these are the kind of ideas, the way that your thinking and your understanding of what life is, your values, start to change as you meditate. And I'm talking about meditating within the context of the Eightfold Path, meaning that you're also developing and practicing generosity and kindness and compassion. You are accepting and training yourself to live within boundaries, the way that you act and the way that you speak to the people around you. And you're learning to look and to learn from experience. So meditation practice is one part of this. But it's not simply that if you become very peaceful and calm, then that's it. You're meditating correctly. Now you've got it down. You're a good meditator. But if you understand meditation, it's a gradual process by which you are changing within, changing yourself, your understanding of life, the way that you relate to other people. So many things but it's incremental. What I mean by that is that when people try to assess meditation, they say, I want to be up there and I'm still down here. But if you're looking at simply incremental changes in the quality of your life, and you start to observe, through meditation, through practice, I'm a little bit kinder, I'm a little bit more patient, I'm a little bit more compassionate, I'm a little bit more mindful. This is the kinds of changes that you can see. Tangible changes in the quality of your life, the quality of your relations with people around you. But it's a matter of being observant. And I think if there's any real fault I find in meditators, and not just in lay meditators, but monastics as well, not really taking their experience of meditation and reviewing it, and really asking, what does that really mean for my life? And I give you so many examples. Like if you're more, let's say, more intellectual, more cerebral, your mind going on in your head a lot more, then you tend to identify, you tend to think, this is who I am. This is what makes me special. I'm smart, or I'm intelligent. And you identify with thinking. But simple question. Can you tell me what you'll be thinking in 5 minutes' time? No, I can't. What about 5 seconds' time? What about 1 second? What's your next thought going to be? Nobody knows. Even your next thought, you have no idea what it's going to be. You can make some pretty, it's likely to be something on this lines because you've been thinking about this for the past, on and off for the past minute or two. But you know, suddenly a thought from, I don't know where it comes from, just pops into your mind at any time. And so here we can see what that means about the selflessness of thought. It's not something you have any control over. You're not the owner of thoughts. You can't just decide to think or not think about something. So when you observe, let's say you're being mindful in meditation, and then suddenly out of nowhere, this really nasty thought comes into your mind. You know, something really horrible or really shameful. Wow, where does that come from? Yep. And the thing is that our minds, it's like a room with all the windows and all the doors open. You know, anything can come into that room. You know, it could be an arahant, and it could be a poisonous snake. If the windows and doors are open, anything can come in. And that's what our minds are like. You know, we can't guarantee that none of those things won't come into your mind. So so what do you conclude from that? One of the things you conclude is, in meditation, you're learning not only about yourself and your own mind, you're learning about humanity. You're the guinea pig. But greed, anger, hatred, jealousy, kindness, compassion, patience, whatever you observe in your mind, that's not like specific to you, is it? It's the human quality of patience. It's the human quality of kindness. It's the human quality of anger. So you are learning all of these essential components of being a human being very directly. You're not learning about them as a theory or as a philosophy, but you're looking at them right. And so if you understand how anger works, its nature in yourself, you understand everybody else in the world. Because the things that make everybody angry are different, but the anger itself is the same. We compare with people at the time of the Buddha, the things that made them greedy, the things that they desired might be different, but the human experience of greed and desire has not changed and never will change as long as there are human beings. So if we really want to understand the human condition, why do people do the things they do? How can we make the world a better place? Well, we have to understand the human condition, not as a philosophy, but by looking at it. And we look at our own experience. So if you have, you're there and suddenly like an angry thought came into your mind. And you think, yeah, that's how it must be for everyone. It's not like, maybe someone's just sitting there and suddenly an angry thought comes into your mind. And if you lack mindfulness right there, you'll just follow it. And we see that we can develop an ability where, like an angry thought or a greedy thought, something comes up, and if our mindfulness is strong enough, then we recognize it. And we don't grasp onto it, and we don't try and push it away, we recognize it. And recognizing it, it passes away, because we're not feeding it. And then we can have the observation, well, that's so cool, and you can do that, and that's something that you can train yourself to do, but it's really difficult to do it on a consistent basis, and so it's difficult for me, who's a meditator and who's really trying to develop this as a skill. How much more so for people who've never meditated, never have any kind of idea about this? How could you expect people to be free from anger and prejudice and all these things? Because nobody's even trying to do the work
of looking within and understanding how the mind works and how to deal with the mind. So you feel great compassion for human beings, and that sense of frustration and disappointment and depression and anger about the way people behave in the world, it starts to fall away, because it's like this. Because if people lack that clarity of mind and mindfulness, when these triggers trigger these unwholesome mental states, people just fall for it. They have no defenses. They have no perspective. How could it be any way else? So these are kind of thoughts and reflections that come up when you're examining and evaluating your meditation. So many life skills, so many insights. I think I've been talking a bit too long, but just one more, a very important one, is that if your mind does put down all its attachment and interest and fascination with memories and perceptions and thoughts, and the mind and mindfulness becomes stabilized. Now, when your mindfulness becomes stable, as to say it's not interrupted, and you have this uninterrupted flow of mindfulness, then certain things happen. The mind there's a very deep sense of well-being and clarity and peace. And this is what we call samadhi. The mind's very stable and clear and bright and happy. Now, when the mind becomes calm in that way, the joy and the bliss that can arise is quite startling. And if we withdraw from that at the end of the meditation, then we can compare it. That joy that didn't come from getting something, enjoying something, adding something to what we got already. It was the joy of simply removing all the things that we've sort of plastered on top of the mind, and all the unnecessary stuff and all the defilement. So it's like chipping away, what's concealing the purity of the heart. And it's such a beautiful and sublime experience. And then when we compare it to the pleasures that we get through this eyes, ears, lungs, it's no question, this is so superior. And so, in the question, well, how do you give up addictive behaviors? And how do you, this isn't right, it's too much, but it's just, you can't let it go. And why? Why is that? Even though it's not good for my health, or I'm destroying my relationship with the people around me with all these sensual addictions, pleasures, it's because you have no alternative, or because you don't really believe that there's an alternative, you see. So the underlying sort of belief for most people is something is better than nothing. Whatever that something might be, no matter how unsatisfactory, it's better than nothing at all. And the assumption is, if you don't have these kinds of addictions in your life, even though they're quite destructive and they're not giving you the kind of happiness that you hope for, it's better than nothing. And that's why really smart people get addicted to sensual pleasures, because of this assumption or this belief that something is better than nothing. So how do you deal with that? Well, the way you deal with it is developing samadhi, and then you prove for yourself there is an alternative. There is a happiness and a contentment which is only experienced by putting down those addictions, and it's so much superior. So seeing this has all kinds of consequences, from the way that you behave, the way you treat other people, your value system, the things you aspire to in life. All these things change because of this experience of profound inner peace and bringing that experience to bear and to compare it, to evaluate your everyday experience. So as we are approaching the very important day, the Visakha Puja day, in a few days, the day of the Buddha's birth and his enlightenment, his death, I just want to talk about, meditation and this whole practice, spiritual cultivation, maybe from a slightly different angle. I say I'm hardly talked at all about specific techniques, but the approach and the attitude and learning from the experiences in meditation and not letting the mind be carried away by craving for results and then frustrated when you don't get the results, but looking at the process itself, taking joy in the process and learning from the process. And there's one final point, there's a phrase that we're familiar with now is lifetime learning. It's a very good thing. But I would say that this originated with the Buddha. And the support for that argument is that the Buddha referred to arahant, fully enlightened beings, as aseka puggala. And aseka puggala means graduate, one who doesn't need to study anymore, doesn't need to train anymore. And meaning everyone except for arahants still has work that needs to be done, still needs to study, still needs to learn, still needs to train. So this is the idea we have as Buddhists. We are people. We're in training, and we're learners. We're learning about what it means to be a human being, and that it's through learning that we truly express our humanity. So this is the talk I would like to offer you this afternoon.